everyone, and welcome to Wine Styles Ankeny 10-Minute Tasting. I'm Mindy, and I'm here with Paul and Cheyanne, and today we're focusing on Chardonnay in honor of National Chardonnay Day. We know, we're hearing it already. Many of you are saying, ugh, Chardonnay, since we know that's the wine everyone loves to hate. But Cheyanne, tell us why we shouldn't hate Chardonnay.
Yes, so Chardonnay is the grape that everybody hates, and usually it's because it reminds you of your mother-in-law because she drinks it with 2 ice cubes in it. And for me personally, I used to be a self-proclaimed Chardonnay hater. I said that I would not drink it, but then I started kind of learning about all the different styles that you can find in Chardonnay. Everything from a Unoaked Chablis to a California butter bomb like Rombauer, and I really started to enjoy the grape, and even just looking for all the different styles and trying to figure out what you can pick out from the different types you can get. But it's just such a good grape to be able to do things with. So
yeah, one of our favorite things, or Paul's favorite things, I think, during tastings is when one of you comes in and says, oh, I don't like Chardonnay. I don't even want to taste it. And Paul, what do?
Well, I might pull out a secret Chardonnay and pour it just to see. Because the interesting thing about Chardonnay is there's so many different expressions. And, you know, Chardonnay is the most popular, the most made white wine in the world. So it's made in every country. It's made in every wine area that produces wine grapes. So, you know, we have so many different expressions of Chardonnay, and so a lot of times I think when our guests come in and they don't like Chardonnay, it's really because they don't like maybe the 80s and 90s interpretation of the big, oaky, buttery Chardonnay. But the true expression of Chardonnay comes from France, and it comes from Burgundy, where it's not oaked and it's not, it hasn't gone through malolactic fermentation, so it's not the buttery, it's more of a bright, clean, fresh wine. So again, it's a chameleon. It takes on what the winemaker wants it to take on. It takes on the area that it came from.
So you mentioned buttery, because we hear that a lot, people asking for a buttery wine, and then I heard you mention malolactic fermentation. What does that mean?
Well, this is the science geek in me, and I love to talk about science and chemistry, so I'm sorry, but when we talk about buttery and wine, I think it brings to mind, you know, taking a big dollop of butter and putting it in the wine, but that's actually, it has nothing to do with butter or oil. The butter comes from a compound that is given off in the secondary fermentation. So all red wines and many white wines go through a second fermentation. So the first fermentation is the yeast turn the sugar into alcohol, which makes wine. And then there's a secondary fermentation in many wines where bacteria change one of the main acids in wine, which is malic acid, to lactic acid. So it's a bacterial fermentation. And lactic acid is much smoother than malic acid, so it gives you a smoother feel on your tongue. But while that's happening, it actually produces a chemical called diacetyl, and that's where the butter comes from. And so if you look it up on the internet, where is diacetyl, you will find that it is in movie theater butter. And so the movie theater butter that we're used to, that flavor, is a chemical compound called diacetyl, and that's what's in a white wine or a red wine after malolactic fermentation.
So I know what I'm hiding in my purse next time I go into the movie theater to pair with
Chardonnay on popcorn. Could be good. Could be good.
Right.
Could be good.
you also mentioned that Chardonnay is, of course, one of the widest grown grape in the world. Where are kind of like the big regions where you can find a good Chardonnay? Like when I come into the store, which region should I look for?
And you know what, that is actually the main point with Chardonnay, because the region is going to tell you what you're going to get in a flavor profile. So Chardonnay comes from Burgundy, France. I think everybody agrees that that's the homeland. so one of the biggest, most famous wine producing areas in the world is Burgundy, France, some of the most expensive wines in the world. And that's Chardonnay's home. So if you go into a wine store, if you come into our store and it's a white wine and it says Bourgogne or Burgundy or white Burgundy, that is a Chardonnay. By law, in Burgundy, France, if it's a white wine and it's sold under the Burgundy label, it is Chardonnay.
Fun fact, that's my favorite white wine, by the way.
So a Burgundy Chardonnay is going to be a very crisp, lean. It's not going to be the oaky, buttery wine that we associate with California wines from especially the 80s and 90s. It's going to be a very tart, more green apple, a very acidic wine. So the other interesting thing about Chardonnay, again, it's grown all over the world, it's grown in many different regions. It takes on the character of the local terroir, it takes on the character of the local area. And so Chardonnay is also grown in Chablis, which is the most northern area, most northern region of Burgundy. And in Chablis, it's a colder environment, so it's going to be a very, very crisp, very austere, minerally expression of the Chardonnay grape. And then if you go even a little bit further north, the region of Champagne, and we have an example of a French, this is actually a Cremant de Bourgogne, but Champagne is a region in France that if you get a white wine, which will be sparkling from Champagne, it will be Chardonnay 100% of the time. But those expressions are going to be the more crisp, minerally expressions. If you get one Chardonnay from Napa, it's probably going to be the oaky, it's going to be the buttery, more, a California style. So Chardonnay is all over the board, and it's very fun to kind of learn the different expressions in different areas.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because the different regions are going to definitely give you different flavor profiles as well. So the cooler climates are going to be more kind of the apple, more of a green or a yellow apple, as well as some of that lemon, that citrus peel, versus the warmer climates is where you're going to get more of that pineapple flavor from it. And then vanilla and that creme brulee flavor is going to come from a wine that's more oaked or more heavily oaked. So they can definitely vary, as Paul said. A lot of herb and minerality too in them, especially if you're talking about more of the unoaked Chardonnays.
Yeah.
So Cheyanne, you're kind of the cook of the group here. So tell us about some pairings with the different Chardonnays.
Yeah, so if you are looking for kind of doing a more oaky, more buttery, so a California style chard, I would recommend doing a pumpkin ravioli. That would be a fantastic. I find California Chardonnays to be the perfect fall wine because they're warming, but they're still a little cool, or they're still a little chill that happens with them, if you will. And so a pumpkin ravioli would be great with a oaky, big Chardonnay. Something that would go well with a Chablis style or a Burgundian style chard would be a seaman fish cake with some type of not quite as spicy as like sriracha, but a type of a spicy sauce to kind of drizzle over top of that. I think that would be phenomenal.
Seafood, any kind of shrimp or shellfish or seafood with a lemon butter would be just fantastic. Would go perfectly with it.
And the fun thing about pairings too is you don't have to go textbook. So if you have a big, bold Napa Chardonnay, that can actually pair well with a steak too.
Oh,
it's not something that we think about. I know.
You can't have white wine with red food.
But you can. It just is picking the right style of the Chardonnay to go with the food as well. What we have here in our glass is our Klein Chardonnay from Sonoma. And so we're gonna all take a little smell of this and a taste.
So this is definitely California. You can get that right away on the nose, that there's that California oak character. Very floral, though. Very floral.
Definitely being from a little bit warmer climate, you can get some of that more pineapple
the
flavor.
tropical fruits.
And from the oak aging, definitely a vanilla flavor. But this actually maintains its acid
Yes.
and its brightness, though. Even though you get the, it maintains. I think this is a perfect kind of a riding the line between a Burgundian and a California. You get the oak, you get a little vanilla, you get a little bit of a smoke, but it's still very bright, very mouth-watering, great acid level.
No, I
really like this.
I think this can be kind of a crowd pleaser for any type of Chardonnay drinker.
And it's also very reasonably priced. It's only $13.99 in our store.
Absolutely.
And it's sustainably farmed.
Yes.
So,
yes. It's a
very
perfect,
good for
perfect wine.
Yes, the perfect wine.
Delicious. Anytime a wine makes your mouth water for 10 or 15 seconds after you drink it, it's just a very well balanced wine. You don't get any off flavors or anything unusual. So this is beautiful, actually.
One of the great things too about shopping in our store is how we have our wine set up. So you may like more of a silky unoaked Chardonnay, and for that we have those in what we call our silky section, versus the ones that are heavier, more a little bit more dry, more oaked, are going to be in our rich section. So it makes it easier to find the wine that you like. Obviously, we want to help you, so ask us and we can lead you in the right direction. But if you just want to browse on your own, that makes it nice and easy too for you as the guest to help figure out what you're looking for. Another fun fact is that besides the flavor profile differences, they actually should be drank at different temperatures to enjoy them the most. And I was not aware of that, I'll completely admit. So an unoaked Chardonnay should be enjoyed slightly cooler, around 48 degrees, and then the oak should be around 54 degrees, so more where we drink that red wine around that 55 to just below 60 degree Fahrenheit. So I thought that was interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We drive around and we see the coldest beer in town sign, and with wine, it's not really the case that you want it colder. You don't get a lot of the complex flavor compounds when the wine is very, very cold. So, although white wines are, we consume them cooler than red wines. I think too cold is a problem because you don't get all of the flavor compounds.
Absolutely.
So, refrigerator temperature 33, 34 degrees, probably too cold for all white wines. But certainly with more of a bolder California oak Chardonnay, especially if I'm going to eat it with a steak, and I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to eat it with a steak, so I am. A little warmer is going to be a better flavor profile.
Well, great. Any last words to share with us on Chardonnay, Cheyanne?
I mean, I genuinely enjoy this wine, and I was very surprised by this one.
Yeah.
And I am excited to open the next bottle.
So from Chardonnay hater to Chardonnay lover.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Salute.
Salute. Cheers. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next 10-minute tasting.